are produced through a variety of incineration processes, including improper municipal waste incineration and burning of trash. And this trash burning is actually done a lot on farms. And so all that is released from the burning ends up on the vegetation and in the water. The livestock consumes it, and then it ends up on our dinner plates. It can be released into the air during natural processes such as forest fires and volcanoes. Almost every living creature has been exposed to dioxins or dioxin-like compounds, DLCs. Strict regulatory controls on major industrial sources of dioxin have reduced emissions into the air by 90% compared to levels in 1987. What they don't tell you here is that those dioxins from 87 are still around. Today, people are exposed to dioxins primarily by eating food, in particular animal products, contaminated by these chemicals. Dioxins are absorbed and stored in fat tissue and, therefore, accumulate in the food chain. More than 90% of human exposures through food. And now this train derailment has added to this exposure to dioxins. Health effects. The dioxin TCDD, or mutagen, talking glossary of genetic terms, is a known cancer-causing agent, and other DLCs are known to cause cancer in laboratory animals. Additionally, dioxin exposure has been linked to a number of other diseases, including type 2 diabetes, ischemic heart disease, and an acne-like skin disease called chloracne, a hallmark of dioxin exposure. Dioxins can cause developmental problems in children, lead to reproductive and infertility problems in adults, result in miscarriages, damage the immune system, and interfere with hormones. Exposure to dioxins has widespread effects in nearly every vertebrate species, at nearly every stage of development, including in the womb. Now, we didn't really know how bad these dioxins were until the later 40s and 50s when Monsanto decided to produce herbicides in Nitro, West Virginia, right next to a place called Scary, West Virginia. They produced an herbicide called 2,4,5-T, which was a chemical used in Agent Orange during the Vietnam War. The people who lived in that town after the 40s for years had been exposed to these dioxins, which was attributed to cancers and led to lawsuits down the line. You see, they knew that these dioxin chemicals were the worst of the worst, and even 1 part per million would cause something like chloracne. Now, chloracne is a common side effect of dioxin exposure, which is a rare skin eruption of blackheads, cysts, and nodules, which resembles teenage acne. This can form a few months after exposure, and it could take up to a couple of years to clear up. See, one of the problems with dioxins is that they virtually do not break down or go away. They stick around for generations, folks. How many of you have heard of the Times Beach, Missouri disaster? Now, back in the day, Times Beach was along the Route 66 from Chicago to Los Angeles. But the town was small and underdeveloped, so they didn't have paved roads. And so all the traffic kicked up a lot of dust, which was a nuisance to the town. So the town officials thought it would be a good idea to spray the roads with oil to, in theory, cause the dust to stick to the ground as a type of glue. But the oil they sprayed was tainted with levels of dioxin. They sprayed that stuff all over town. This was a chemical manufacturer's way of getting rid of their waste. Here on History.com, in an article titled "Chemical Contamination Prompts Evacuation of Missouri Town," it reads, "The children of Times Beach loved sliding around in Bliss purple-tinted goo, and no one gave the substance a second thought until animals, particularly horses, who had contact with Bliss-sprayed roads and barn floors and riding rings every day, all year round, started dropping dead. Soon people started to get sick too. In 1979, the EPA came to town and took soil samples. And in 1982, the agency announced that the levels of dioxin, the most potent cancer-causing agent made by man, the newspaper said in Times Beach, were off the charts. The agency evacuated the town just after Christmas. In all, the agency spent $250 million and incinerated 265,000 tons of dioxin-tainted soil. In 1999, the bulldozed and cleaned up Times Beach reopened as the Route 66 State Park.
Here are Navy SEALs' 3 rules for surviving a real-world assault. Rule number 1, always fight dirty.
Cleaned up Times Beach reopened as the Route 66 State Park. You see, folks, people can't even live there anymore. Yet they told people in East Palestine that it was okay to return home after just a few days. I'm sorry, but East Palestine should be condemned. Do you guys really know how toxic this stuff is? Eric Coppolino, who is an expert on dioxins, puts this into perspective for us. He says, the amount of dioxin, that is the size of a single aspirin tablet, is, according to the government, a safe amount of dioxin for around 32 million people. A small amount of this is so dangerous, they have to measure this stuff into parts per quadrillion. In other words, folks, there is no amount of this stuff that is safe. No amount is safe. Nobody should be in East Palestine right now without a spacesuit on, especially women and pregnant women. You know what's not so funny? This town just happens to be just the right size. It's about 2 miles from east to west and about 2 miles from north to south. They are instructed to evacuate up to 1 mile from ground zero in this type of an emergency. Folks, that water system that spreads across half of the U.S. that I showed you in the chemical plant video, that water system starts in East Palestine. Now, in the next day or two, weather is going to pick up and sweep some of that toxic fallout all across the Northeast and swish it around the Great Lakes while it's still fresh. The Great Lakes is already loaded with this stuff. This is not a joke, folks. I said a common symptom of dioxin and poisoning is chloracne. Well, I am still researching how to stay healthy while being exposed to dioxins, but at least I can give you the other side effects in humans. According to an overview of the effects of dioxins and dioxin-like compounds on vertebrates, which was published by the National Library of Medicine, listen to this. Adverse health effects of dioxin exposure in humans may include cardiovascular disease, diabetes, cancer, porphyria, endometriosis, early menopause, reduced testosterone and thyroid hormones, altered immunologic response, skin, tooth, and nail abnormalities, altered growth factor signaling, and altered metabolism. These are consistent with adverse health outcomes documented in laboratory and wildlife species. In addition, some of the biochemical changes described above in other species, including altered expression of growth factors and their receptors, and metabolic enzymes, have been observed in humans. The effects of dioxin exposure during development are also many and include altered thyroid and immune status, altered neural behavior at the level of hearing, psychomotor function, and gender-related behaviors, altered cognition, dentition, and development of reproductive organs, and delays in breast development, in addition to altered sex ratios among the exposed offspring. Recent studies have revealed that thyroid stimulating hormone was elevated in neonates born from mothers with presently elevated plasma dioxin levels, nearly 30 years after their exposure during the 1976 Seveso dioxin disaster. Another study on men who were exposed to dioxin in their youth in Seveso found that those who were exposed prior to puberty exhibited reduced sperm count and motility as adults 22 years later, while those who were exposed during adolescence exhibited increased sperm counts and motility. You see, the weather is going to pick up this dioxin fallout along with a bunch of other substances, and it's going to distribute this across the nation. It doesn't matter if it's wet or dry weather. It gets in the soil and it moves in the dust. It's going to accumulate in the water and the vegetation and the animals and us. It is part of our environment now. Now again, is this all a coincidence that these dioxins and other chemicals affect our reproductive health and immune systems? I have to look further into how to remedy this, folks, and here I just wanted to emphasize the severity of the issue. There will be more to report on this, so stay tuned. I want to give a big thank you to all of our sponsors and Level 1 members of WoodwardEntertainment.com. New members are joining every day, and so the future looks very exciting. Be sure to visit the website and the Woodward Entertainment store. Woodward TV is now available on Rumble. You can also follow me on Instagram at JAEWoodward. I know there is a lot to watch out for these days, and I have a feeling we'll be quite busy in the coming months. So until next